Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'll be discussing how to make the Zoie Briefs that you can see here. These briefs are a very similar method to make as every other briefs that I have. So all of these skills will transfer over to other briefs and other applications. So for this pattern you'll need some lycra and lining. For the lining I like to use the exact same lycra as I've used for the outer part of the garment. Now the side panels on the front are optional to line. You can line these if you prefer, but I don't always. It just depends on how thick the fabric is on the side or what look I'm trying to achieve. I've gone ahead and cut out all my pattern pieces before filming, and now I am showing you how I'm going to pin the lining and the outer fabric. This is to move on to do the basting. So as you can see, I have gone in with pins around the edge and made sure the two layers are sitting flat, and I have pinned a few points. Usually I would just do all of the corners. I just want it to sit flat, and that helps me when I am pinning. And then I'm just putting pins in all the way around, and then that allows me to easily baste stitch it later. Moving on to basting, this is the same method I use for every single costume I make. I have a long and narrow zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to stitch within the seam allowance all the way around all of the edges. Here you can just see a slowed down version. And then we're going to move on to sewing our seams. So I'm going to be sewing the front pieces first, so joining with the right sides together the side panel accent pieces with the center front panel. I am joining these with a short straight stitch. My length on my straight stitch is about a 2, and as I sew I slightly stretch the fabric out, and this helps to prevent the stitches from snapping. You can use any method to create your seams. Some people like to use an overlocker or a cover stitch machine, and that's perfectly fine. So here you can see I've moved on to top stitching the seam allowance, and I like to top stitch my seam allowance towards the center front in this case. But sometimes if that seam is really thick, I will open up the seam and top stitch both sides, or I'll fold it towards the side that is less thick. I do my top stitching with a length of 4, so it's a slightly longer straight stitch. But of course you could use a machine like a cover stitch machine if you prefer. Now we're doing the same thing. We are just going to join the seams at the side seam and the crotch seam and the other side seam. Moving on, we're going to start elasticating, and we're going to do the leg holes on both sides and the waist seam. For the leg holes I like to use a 6mm elastic, and for the waist seam I like to use an 8mm elastic. For the waist you are giving it an even stretch all the way around, but for the legs you want to stretch it slightly at the front and pull it quite tight at the back. Now we are going to move on to do the top stitching. So here you can see I'm starting with the leg hole, and I'm just folding that under, and I have a slightly wider stitch to do this, and I'm using a length of 3 and a width of 4 on the 6mm elastic. And as you sew you just want to stretch the fabric out so it sits flat. Now one thing to consider when you're going over these side panels, if they are a different colour you may want to swap threads to match it better, but in this instance I didn't need to. And now doing the exact same process for the top waistband seam, and because this one is the 8mm elastic I've gone with a wider stitch, so I've got about a width of 5 here. And once you've got all of these seams nicely finished, that is it. You can sew in a label if you prefer, but that is your finished briefs. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments or send me a message on Instagram if you have any questions. Happy sewing!